Welcome to your monthly webinar from the IT Documentation Users Group. This is a Facebook group founded in May 2018, originally as ITDUG, by Tracy Harden, whose picture is on the screen. She runs an MSP called Next Century Technologies, and then Alan and Eureka Process came on board to help admin the group. It's been growing by membership pretty darn well, hitting 1,000, 2,000, and then 3,000 members, and we're certainly on target to break 4,000 this year as well. The beautiful thing about more members is when you ask questions about documentation, you have more people to answer those questions. But let's get into today. Alan Edwards founded Eureka Process, helping MSPs to scale by aligning people, process, and strategy. Connor Swalm is co-founder of Phin Security, helping small businesses protect themselves from cybersecurity threats. Today, we are going to address employee vulnerability.
Let's talk. Connor, you, I, and the rest of the team talked a couple of times prior to the webinar about what this presentation was. First of all, while we have a few slides, this is not really a slideshow presentation. This is a conversation. I think we said a few minutes ago, Connor, this is a conversation about humans.
Yeah.
We're going to touch on some documentation and some process, but this is the people element. As you said, I think you weren't smiling when you said that that's the best part of business.
Yeah, their employees are your greatest asset, and I guess we'll get into it later. At some points your greatest vulnerability as well.
Highly noted. So let's talk about. Let's start with introducing the concept of employee vulnerability first, before we get into the grander human piece. I believe I can show the slide here. There we go.
Yeah.
Let's go one more slide forward, Veronica. The reason this becomes an issue, you know what, Connor, you're the expert. You tell me why I care about this.
According to, I'll say this, insert any threat report you've ever read or vulnerability report. The most common form, the easiest way, I should say, or the most common way that hackers get into companies, or way that cybersecurity incidents occur, usually involves a human being at some level. And by human being, I mean an employee in a company. So whether it's through, you put the two most common ways there, social engineering and phishing. So whether it's through that, or whether it's through using, compromised passwords or something like that. Humans are typically the most common form of entry into a company, which is something that's interesting, something that should be talked about.
Yeah, and I find most people in our space, IT services firms, are at least aware of this, right? The guy who accidentally paid a bill that wasn't actually from that vendor. Or
Absolutely.
Of course, the Nigerian princes.
Yeah, or the most common one that I've heard now is I'm your CEO and I need you to give me $300 in prepaid gift cards or something like that.
Right. Okay. So I figure the answer is we have to work with humans to make that better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's a phrase that some people use called the human firewall. I don't particularly like that phrase, because humans are humans. They're not ones and zeros. So it turns out that in order to help a human overcome this, vulnerability, or to change the way they act, you need to treat them like human beings and work with them like they're human beings, and understand that humans make mistakes. We're not just these computers with what did you say when we talked last? The computer we have is the gray matter between our ears or something like that. I like that.
We are computers, just too complex to understand yet.
Yeah, I'll say for forever, but I'll let you say yeah.
I don't know the future. So before we get too far, I'm curious from our audience what the stance is on what they're doing now for employee vulnerability, human vulnerability. So we do have a live poll we're going to share on the screen here. You're going to be able to vote by going to swiftpolling.com. Just type that into a browser. You can also text 2760, enter the code 14795, and cast your vote. So first of all, do you have an expectation, Connor, whose audio we can't hear yet? I'll ask you when you come back on what you're going to find in this poll.
Yes. So I cannot. Yeah, I expect frequently to be the most accepted one. Never. I would be worried if somebody put never, but please don't. I'm not going to know who you are, so please put that if it's being honest. But I expect frequently or often to be the most.
Interesting. And what? So the question is, how frequent is the security training at your organization? So what do you call security training?
There's a difference between what I call security training. So let's talk. What is specifically security training? It looks many different ways. I'm sure everybody has been through a security awareness seminar, right? Somebody comes into your office, and well, this was pre-COVID days, obviously, but security training could be anything from a live thing that somebody comes in and trains you for a couple hours to watching a video on your screen to attesting to a policy that you ended up getting prescribed to you. It could look many different ways. It's just the digestion of some form of content, and then maybe an assessment at the end, maybe not. That's the definition of training in my mind.
And so you think that most people are going to say that they do this frequently?
Frequently or often, yeah. I don't know what they look the exact same to me, but maybe now that I said frequently, everyone's like, no, I'm not going to vote that way.
I want Connor to be wrong.
Yeah. I'm okay being wrong. I'm wrong so much that when I start to get right, I start thinking about things differently,
Yeah.
But I would think often and frequently mean roughly the same thing. And we can, I guess, if there's going to be some interaction with the audience in a bit, they can tell me what often really means to them, because, Alan, to some people, often would mean every quarter, but to some people, training would mean every day, or often would mean every day, and to others, it means every week and every month. And
we actually created a rating system here to talk about how our meetings are, and we've switched away from numbers and stars and thumbs up and thumbs down, and we went back to words, feeling words though: bad, okay, good, or great. We call it the BOG rating: bad, okay, good, or great. And it's because, first of all, we're not actually scoring anything, just like in this poll. We're just getting a feel for where people are.
Yeah.
And using these feeling words are good enough to get people to respond. Yeah. Like I said, frequently was avoided. Connor does not want to be right. And what does continuously mean to you, Connor?
Continuous means that there's an uninterrupted flow of new training that an employee is exposed to. That specifically addresses training needs that specific employee has. So what do I mean by that? Training often could be clicking go on a video through your learning management system every week or every month. But training continuously would be if your employee is enrolled in some kind of process that you have where they get training, maybe that's job specific to themselves, and it's updated every week or every month with specific modules that they need, or maybe it's updated based upon their previous feedback or their surveys. One thing that I highly recommend companies do is, I know it's a weird concept, but ask the employees. It's like, hey, how do you feel about this? Like your BOG rating. I love that idea. Ask them, like, how do you feel about this? And depending upon that, maybe you want to adjust the amount of training or the type of training employees get, whatever it ends up being. But a continuous training process would adjust itself to the employee to make it as good as possible, as good as an experience as possible.
So there are a lot of powerful tools out there that people are selling, monthly subscriptions, thought processes on how do you help train employees, humans, to do this. But there seems to be a lot of exploits still. I know my cyber insurance policy just tripled this month.
Yeah.
What are the challenges that we're still facing? What's not working now?
The hardest.
How does it work these days?
How do we get it to work these days? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
The hardest challenge is I've never put this to words, I guess. The hardest challenge is the speed at which new vulnerabilities can arise, right? Specifically, I'll mention this because we saw the same thing happening with phishing and COVID-related emails when COVID became a thing. It was all of a sudden in like January, COVID wasn't a thing. You sent out a COVID email, everyone would just, it's spam. What is COVID? But then March and April rolled around, and phishing and clicks on just anything that had the word COVID in it went way up. And so what that's an example of is the training that users or that individuals are receiving. It often lags behind the need or the complexity of their real world of their job and the way they interact with people. That's one of the challenges. The second is nobody likes training. Well, I don't want to say nobody because that's a blanket statement, but very few people I have ever talked to enjoyed the training they received in any area, not just cybersecurity. So that's also pretty much those two challenges. You solve those two things and you solve training for everybody. So,
sweet. Easy peasy.
Yeah, just easy peasy.
It's kind of like saying, hey, I told you to do this. And then if it still doesn't get done, why are all the thousands of reasons that didn't happen?
Yeah.
Don't know how, didn't want to, ran out of time, and other priorities. So many. All right. So we have to work on changing their behaviors, which is a whole other science.
Yep.
You also mentioned they don't like having to do these things. They're just not interested in security. And I can see that, hey, you hired me to do X.
Yeah.
Why do I have to learn all this stuff about security, how to verify an email address? And you also mentioned the concept of punitive training. Explain that to me.
So I'll explain this through some candid conversations I've had with employees of our clients. When I ask them, what was your previous learning experience like? What is your current learning experience like? What did you describe the process? What did you like? What did you not like? The thing that the story they end up telling me is that they get, specifically with security, they get phished. They fail some form of assessment, and then they get enrolled in a video that they feel a couple of ways about. Doesn't actually help them recognize phishing emails, right? They know they should hover over buttons and they shouldn't click on things that look suspicious, but they do so anyway because they're in a tizzy or whatever. They're moving along pretty quick. And the second thing is they feel they're being punished. So when they feel like they haven't been properly prepared to recognize these phishing attacks, or when they think the training is not going to benefit them, but then they're forced to go through it, that's when they start getting angry, when they start getting upset. And every employee I've talked to about their training has told me a variation of the exact same story. I mute the video, put it on my second monitor, or I walk away from my computer, I walk my dog, I play with my cat, I go see my kids, whatever the story is. It's like they're sticking it to the man mentality, where they're like, I'm not gonna be a part of this process because I don't need to be, because I know that I don't need this training. That's where the punitive training brings out that kind of mentality, which
you also said a key word in the very early part of the description. That was the word fail.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any hope when you start with the concept of you failed something, therefore?
No, and it's a sticky subject. And actually, there's one of my good friends. His name is Jason. He's also in security awareness. He actually helped me change my terminology around this like adversarial mentality that exists around employees and training employees. Instead of repeat offenders, like people who continuously, like as you said, fail these tests, call them repeat responders. They're doing what you ask them to. They're responding to these assessments. They may be responding in the exact same way you want or you'd like, but the act of responding is all you need, because then you can step in. You can give that employee more support. You can help them in a different way, whatever it needs to be. But as long as they're responding, they're continuing to be a part of the process. And I really like that.
Words matter. We have a couple of blog posts, and we talk about this internally as well. We have a whole vocabulary that we try to eliminate and replace with different words. Employee is one of those words, by the way.
What did you change it with?
Team member, teammate.
I like it.
There is one exception to the employee rule, which is sometimes if you're writing something like a handbook, you are actually possibly required by law to indicate that this is an employee relationship. But with the exception of those rare cases, teammate, team member, just like we don't say contract, we say agreement.
Yeah.
But words matter. And this is, we've talked many times in our pre-webinars about humans. We have to do things that aren't always logical to improve behavior. So we have to learn to speak the language. Like a story Brooke and I share is we had this tier 3 technician. They were always the worst. Nobody liked him because he was rude, above everybody, but he got stuff done, right? Like he was really good at the technical work. And he literally did not understand the human element. I asked for this. Why did I not get this? Why are they crying? Like, there's no tears in IT.
Why are they crying? There's no tears in IT. I like that.
And so after some coaching opportunities, notice these word changes we're having here, coaching opportunities, I realized he really did not understand. Yeah. He was wired different than many of the rest of us. So I asked him for something ones and zeros like, hey, could you please start every email and Slack message with please and end it with thank you? Don't worry about context. Just do those two things. He did. He probably wrote a script for it. But a week later, the rest of our team has come back to me like, hey, what'd you tell this guy? He's so much nicer now. It doesn't necessarily make logical sense that the rote response of, please, Connor, could you do this for me? Thank you. Those 3 words added made a difference in human behavior. So we just we have to actually speak to a language our audience understands. I love examples, so bear with me for one more example. We're teaching our roommate's dog, a dog training. And the first question the dog trainer asks us is, hey, what language does your dog speak? And I live in a multicultural household. Our answer could have been English, Spanish, Czech, or Slovak. Turns out the answer was dog.
That makes sense, though.
Dog. This is how you communicate in dog language to your dog so they understand you better. And I think that's key for this problem of how to change human behavior.
Yeah, you need to be really keenly aware of who is the audience, because a lot of people, not just IT, not just cybersecurity, not just like that technician you talked about, they start to lose the sense of who they're talking to. They talk and they project how they would like to be communicated with. As you said, that's exactly what happened to your IT guy, as opposed to thinking, how does this person that I'm interacting with, how would they like to be talked to? How can I adjust my message to better connect with them? Because at the end of the day, the whole point of communicating is, you communicate what you want, and that supposedly has an impact on the way that person behaves.
So you gave.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, my bad. You gave me a great parable story about what happens when you judge people based on how well they know security and check emails. What was that story?
If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll live its whole life thinking it's stupid.
And so how
many things fishes are great at. Climbing a tree is not one of them. And I believe, well, yeah, I hope nobody has epilepsy. I believe that's Albert Einstein. Don't quote me on that. Albert Einstein's quote, maybe. I believe you're about to go into where's the security connection into that, right?
Well, I mean, to me, it's obvious, but tell me more, because I didn't hire a bunch of security experts, right?
Yeah.
You might have. I didn't.
I hired some software developer. Well, I guess we're more security minded, but the whole point is if you replace fish with anyone, an employee, or doesn't even a team member, I'm going to start using that now. You've convinced me, Alan, already. Look, words are changing. They're not. You didn't, as you mentioned earlier, you didn't hire many of your team members to do cybersecurity, but they're required to know it at some level in order to interact with each other and with the outside world safely. But if you judge that, I almost said it again, that team member on solely their performance in that area, they're going to get super upset. They're going to continuously, I don't know what the word you guys use for fail, or they're going to continuously not be able to interface properly with those assessments. They're not going to respond well to any training they get after that point, because they feel like they're getting judged based upon their ability to climb the tree. And you mentioned the mentality earlier. And even though you may have been saying it tongue in cheek, like the employee's like, you hired me to do X, Y, and Z, not stupid security. I've actually had that conversation with employees before. So it's not something they're unaware of. They're acutely aware of, like, I don't want to do this because, well, I need to be doing this and all these other things. And that's where the whole concept of I'm going to mute this and move on with my day because I got better things. better things to handle comes from. So you're absolutely right.
Well, I mean, speaking of the human condition, I mean, who likes change and who likes being in a position where suddenly you don't know something?
Right.
You feel stupid. Unfortunately, even our education system, and I mean this generally worldwide, tends to give us the feeling that mistakes are bad.
Yep.
There's a story I'm quoting from some famous book, so I have stolen this story. Please don't quote me on this. Okay. Some team member makes a $6,000 mistake. It's expensive. Oh my gosh, we have to pay this bill because an employee made a mistake. And the CEO is sharing the story with one of his mentors over a coffee. And the mentor's like, man, so did you fire him after that? It's like, what do you mean? I just paid $6,000 in training. I mean, it's an opportunity to improve. Like, that's the whole point of the security awareness training, right? Hey, you have this learning opportunity. Let's learn. It wasn't a failure. Thank goodness, because you were actually testing ahead of time.
Absolutely.
And even for the big failures, if you learn from it, it had some value.
Correct. And that is why I just wrote a blog on this, fail as first attempt in learning. I really do like that.
I remember when Adam first shared that with me from our team, as I wrote that in the channel, in our team's channel. We have one that says, shit Alan says. Love repeating things.
No, that is first attempt in learning. That's absolutely right. We all make mistakes. And if you jump down a team member's throat because they made a mistake that anyone thrown in that position would have almost certainly have made as well. It's not only a message to the rest of your team members, it's a message to that specific team member. A whole bunch of leadership books on that and whatnot, but it's absolutely right. Absolutely right.
I've got to say, I certainly make my share of mistakes, learning opportunities. But I remember the stuff that we teach. We try to be experts at what we teach, practice what we preach. And I've been working on some of our new team members here. Like, okay, now that we're past the training period, we need to start putting time on tickets and following our systems right. And yesterday, I almost posted the message, and they're gonna now see through me. That was like, okay, guys, we've got to get these numbers up, these metrics, these KPIs. I stopped myself and I recognized that I pretty much said that a few days ago. The numbers have improved. So my response was, hey, these things are heading in the right direction. Great job, team. Adam added a attaboy to the list. And we got the message across. We're still working on it. But everybody did improve. So why berate progress?
Absolutely. I got to meet this Adam guy. Sounds like he has a lot of good quotes that I should be learning about.
I could see his video in the green room, and he's making all sorts of things. I think he's pretty stoked.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. To put it in a different context, the exact same thing in a different context, very popular clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson, he has roughly the same quote when it comes to relationships, is if you see something that your spouse or that your significant other is doing that you really like, you want more of, it's like, go out of your way to recognize it.
Yes.
Go out of your way. Because if you want more of that action or that thing or that the way they communicate, they need to be aware of that. You need to communicate at that point now it's an expectation. You need to communicate that expectation with them.
And for those of us who are owners, we're so used to, tweaking our systems, getting things flowing right. And we're looking for exceptions, right? Like, okay, what's wrong here? What can we fix? And by necessity, we can't look at every success, right? We have to expect those, and we have to deal with those first attempts at learning. But at the same time, we've got to work with the humans, our audience, to get the responses that we want out of them, which typically comes from a place of positivity. It typically comes from, I know we use this analogy a lot in the pre-planning, carrot versus stick.
Yeah.
You click the wrong link, you must watch a video. That's a stick.
Right.
So bringing this back to employee vulnerability, what are some possible solutions on how to make this easier, better, more comprehensible by all humans?
Yeah. Can we say less sticky and more carroty?
Those are definitely words. Absolutely.
I'm all for making up words, right? As long as it gets the point across.
Exactly.
The first step is really on the employee, or see, I said it again, team member side, on the team member side, is getting them to understand, okay, why is this training that I'm going through specific to me? So oftentimes it has nothing to do with the way you're delivering the training or whatever. It has to do with the actual training itself. Is this employee either it's not I said it again, look, team member. It's
Great
not
correction, Connor. You're doing great.
it's not communicated to them properly. Okay, why do I need this? How is this important for me, for my job, to make me a better part of this team, essentially? So the first step that I would say is communicate the need for the training. And one way that we do that is we ask every single, specifically one of our clients is like, you should have the stakeholder make a video that says, hey, this is why the training is important. And we put the list together. We're like, you need to tell them it's important because it keeps everybody secure. Make sure you wake up and you can come do your job tomorrow. Make sure that you can continue, like we can continue employing you, and make sure that our company is still here. The culture we've created still exists.
So, okay, why? That's an important concept for everything you do. I mean, every time you write a process of documentation, are you answering the question, why? I mean, every process we write, I lied. In theory, every process we write usually has a short sentence or two at the very beginning about why do we have this process?
Yeah.
Hey, besides the generic every process, why do we have it? It's like, okay, we have this process because, once a month we're trying to achieve this result. This is why we chose once a month. This is how we got here. And then you list the process. So we understand the why. So I do think that's critical. Great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second is being acutely aware. So this is more on the employer side of what's the opposite of the team member for employee, but what's the phrase for the employer, the owner, or the
owner, employer,
owner,
boss.
Yeah. As an owner, you need to be acutely aware, or whoever's in charge of this of the employees' ongoing training. Be aware, is it punitive in any way? And what I mean by that is when they I'll say fail here because it's what people expect, but when they respond in a way that you don't enjoy, you don't want, or you want to change, how do you respond to that as a company? If the answer is load them up with more training, right? They'll be good to go. Give them another hour. You've essentially missed the point. The employee responded, the team member responded in maybe not the way you wanted, but what they need, instead of more of the exact same thing they failed, is they need support. So there should be a whole different process that you end up going through with that employee that encourages them to behave differently. So it still encourages behavior, but encourages different behavior. And doesn't really make them feel like they've been, like, if you want to look, any of the old movies you watched about, nuns and schooling, it's like wrapped across the hand with the wooden stick. Employees hate that. Everybody hates that.
Well, supposedly it built either superheroes or supervillains, and rarely an average person.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. So how do we do this? So why, you said answering why is one of them. And of course, putting some authority behind it, the leader of the company.
Yeah.
What are other ways?
So not being punitive. The second, or I guess it's on the screen right here. Well, I'm looking at it over here. Make it interactive. When it's interactive, when you're doing something, not only do you tend to retain that information for longer because you had to involve many different parts of your brain in learning these things and going through it, but when it's interactive, it feels like you're a part of the process, not just the recipient of it. I probably just touched on something process-oriented that you would love to discuss. Being a part of the process as opposed to receiving it is a very important thing in my mind.
It's huge. So many times we dictate from on high.
Yeah.
Delivering the why certainly helps, and it's a great way to deliver vision, perhaps.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about somebody else doing all the work, being held accountable to the process, getting their involvement in the process is so key. We recommend, people are in the meetings, people are part of the decision-making process, and that the people are doing the execution of creating the processes and rolling out the structure. Sense of pride, sense of belonging, and that true teammate mentality. Yeah,
absolutely. When people feel like they're a part of something, it creates this weird, I say weird, but creates a sense of camaraderie, creates a sense of, as you said, pride in what you're doing and who you're doing it with. And as if you took it from the other perspective, and as you said, dictated from on high, and your team members are no longer a part of that. They're the recipient of something, in the same way that, they can hold out their hand and get something handed to them. That doesn't make them appreciate what was put there. It just makes them a recipient.
Right, which is a very different type of stakeholder.
Correct. Almost like a customer of sorts. And then the third thing that I would recommend is the training needs to be continuous. So we touched on the continuous nature of training, and I described it a little bit earlier. So why is that necessary? People act, I don't want to say people act, but behavior is a constantly changing thing. So if you're not continuously updating not only expectations, but continuously updating the type of support your team members are getting through ongoing training, their behavior is gradually going to diverge from what you expect. Right? There needs to be this continuous process where you are reminding people of what to do, how to do it, when to do it, why they should be doing things. Remind them of the why, I guess, is the biggest reason for ongoing training.
Very good. So obviously today has not been specifically about security.
Right.
It's been about human nature, what we have to do as humans, and it applies to so many things. Connor, I've noticed that several of the quotes or references you've had, it sounds like you've been reading psychology books in order to implement a successful vulnerability assessment, scanning, training program.
I have.
Is that something you identified early on as a necessary step?
Absolutely. I think human beings are the one part of cybersecurity that is not well solved. It's an intractable problems, is what I'm trying to say, is we're consistently changing. So software is not going to make a human do much better, but what will do better is if humans begin to relate to humans better and change the way humans behave together. So absolutely, I actually started this journey reading psychology textbooks, understanding leadership principles, and reading probably most of the same books you are. And then that's actually also, I'm glad you brought this up in a weird way, it's influenced the partners we've made as a company. So not just our clients, not just the people that I've decided to work with that I'm very happy are part of our team. The partners in terms of professional relationships that we've made in this industry, specifically now security awareness, also hold the same perspective. What I've found is it's rare for a cybersecurity company to start not with the cybersecurity, but with the psychology behind it, which is where I started, which is where I thought was the best place to start. But it's super important.
So I'm always cautious during your ITDUG presentations. Yeah. We've had a few sales pitches that we didn't want here, but I've got to know more. I've got to know more about your products. I'm trying to understand the difference in the. I'm not a security expert by any means. I've been in that field. I'm aware of some names, some vendors, what they roughly do. So So with Phin Security, what is it? What does it do, and how is it different?
So there's a few ways we're different. I'll start with where we started in Phin Security is we got completely away from traditional security awareness training. We actually didn't even have a learning management system with content up until a few months ago because we wholly believed that was not the thing that was going to change employee behavior. We started with creating kind of handheld tours of the vulnerabilities that employees end up responding to. I'll say that. I'll use my own phrase, responding to incorrectly, where give you a very specific example. An employee gets phished with one of our emails that we selected for them. Instead of a video, instead of a blog, instead of a YouTube link, instead of some type of static process that they're put in front of, it is the exact same phish that they just responded to incorrectly with a handheld guided tour that they need to walk through. So they need to hover over links to see what ends up coming up. They need to open up sending information to see what is there. They need to hover over the files so they can verify what the extension is. So it's not an executable, it's an actual CSV file. And what we've seen is that process, instead of taking 5 minutes for an employee a team member to end up passively receiving, they spend 30 seconds hovering over links, clicking things, looking at things, reading the text that we put in front of them when we highlight things. And it gets specifically to the exact type of training they need. So these are the 3 things you missed. You didn't miss a video about you didn't miss the things that are in a video about a phish that everybody's seen 47 times. You missed these 3 specific things in this phish today for these reasons.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
I love drawing parallels, even though I
Yeah.
don't mean to reduce anything to some simpler concept.
No, making it simple makes it way better. Please do.
Yeah, which is my team tells me that simplification is not my superpower.
It's not mine either.
I remember taking certification tests back in the 90s.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself. And a few of them got really cool. They were called, it was not just interactive, it was progressive testing.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of having a 100-question Microsoft test, this might have been like Nortel or something, you would take a test. And if you did well, you could do it in like 20 questions. Mm-hmm. But if you showed a weakness in an area, they would kind of expand the line of questioning to some different topics to really drill down if you know the material or not.
Yeah.
And the really good ones that were also interactive, they would give you a task and they would give you just enough program inside the system to click through the proper screens to achieve the task listed. Is that a valid parallel to what you're describing to me?
Yeah, absolutely. Now we give our clients the full control over, they can send out anything they want at any time, but we have these, if you want to call them like campaigns on rails, where it will, for every employee, see their behavior in previous assessments or previous trainings. And it'll say, okay, what is this employee likely to respond to incorrectly? Is it, like I said, the $300 Visa gift card scam? Is it a brand impersonation? Is it business email compromise? Throw any common word out, that any common type of social engineering scam. That an employee specifically is vulnerable to them differently in different ways. Whereas if you take any other employee, they're vulnerable to different things. So our first step was, let's pair the assessment with the training that the employee actually needs, as opposed to blanketing them with common things and saying, that's good enough, we're good to go. They've gotten their training.
Interesting. Is there ever a time where a team member's been with you long enough, they've received various trainings, they don't make very many opportunities for improvement, and so they don't get these very often or never?
Yep, absolutely. And we love to see it. So it's not that they won't continue to receive them, it's that they begin to respond to every variation thereof properly. So what our campaign will do is, if we recognize an employee is improving, we'll not only give them the feedback when they report things to us, we'll be like, hey, you did great. Like, you've caught the last 5 out of 6 assessments and you responded. Your trainings, you're on fire. You're doing stuff every week. We'll give them that positive feedback. But when we notice, hey, they're scoring 100% in all the assessments, it's like, okay, well, now it's time to ratchet it up. Let's look for more vulnerability in other areas. Let's make the difficulty a little greater. Let's start to really test the boundaries of this person's behavior. And then instead of creating some kind of super training process on the back end where now they're going to get a 20-minute video if they fail the super assessments, it's just the exact same process that they've already responded to properly and they've already enjoyed going through. It's the same handheld tour, the same walkthrough, the same kind of support they already expect. Now it's just they're at a different level of assessment.
So it starts off easier so that you don't start off with the hardest one and the employee looks, team member. Oh, I did it now.
Oh, look, I'm a bad influence on you.
Yeah, you're out. So that the team member can feel smarter, right? Instead of saying, hey, fish, you can't climb a tree, you're actually saying, hey, fish, we're going to swim a little this way. Oh, great job. Now we're going to swim a little further. And then next thing you know, your salmon swimming upstream over rocks and valleys.
Yep.
Interesting. Very good.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you give your team members the opportunities to succeed, they'll sometimes shock you. They really will. And most importantly, when you let's extrapolate that to employees. If you don't give employees the opportunity to succeed, to pass these assessments, to feel good about the assessment that they're going through, it only leaves room for a negative interaction, or at best, a mediocre interaction. So if you can never get better and your only possibility is getting worse, you're gradually going to refine that process into the ground, and everyone's going to end up hating the process that they're a part of if you can't give that positive interaction.
Right. Refining a process into the ground. It's something I always have to check for. Always be improving. A negative example is, I have clients who we set key performance indicators, and things start getting very smooth. They're underneath their key performance indicators goals. We refine the goals down until they feel like, hey, if we can do this, we're great.
Yeah.
And then the tendency of the leaders of the organization is, oh, well, let's just do better. let's just make it tighter. I was like, hang on now. We're already exceeding customer expectations in this case. And it's a single key performance indicator, not all of them, right?
Right.
If we keep turning the screws too tight, this is suddenly no longer fun. You're trying to get 101% out of your team members instead of a nice, calm 90%, enjoy working here. So we definitely have to be careful not to over process or over improve things.
Yeah. So that process, the over improving things or ratcheting down to, or being too much of a stickler for the constraints, I guess, how do you avoid that? How do you avoid
that? One, I hold accountable for results.
Okay.
That was a really big question. So a very short answer for one aspect of that.
I know, I kind of dropped it on you.
Yeah, is holding accountable to results. It's for example, the result is you don't want to be hacked, you don't want to be compromised. In your examples, okay, we're going to make some mistakes along the way, but that's a mistake in actions. The result is we don't want to get hacked. So as long as people are progressing, do not berate progress. My own lesson I learned today. As long as they're making progress and we're not being vulnerable and exposed, okay, that's results.
Yeah.
The trip we had to take to get there is not as important. And that's also how you avoid micromanagement. If you're holding a help desk technician to resolving 10 tickets a day and they're resolving 11 tickets a day, everybody's happy with them. Don't complain about how they work the tickets.
Right.
Maybe that's a bad time to talk about a spelling error, if it's rare, in their ticket. Don't look for just every way to improve. Look for results.
That does make sense. How do you deal with, I guess, then the follow-up question then? When do you know that you need to be adjusting the expectations?
As every consultant will tell you, the answer is it depends. Yeah, there has to be, well, in some areas there's a good enough. When all areas are good enough, that does become the enemy to great. Because if you're doing badly, chances are you're well aware and you're ready to improve. When you get to good enough, you're like, okay, it's good enough. I don't have to improve anymore. So I think you have to just analyze each little piece and say, is this really something I need to improve? And sticking to the conversation we're having today, I think predicting how this is going to impact morale and human behavior is probably the best way to look at that. And it's not an easy answer. I mean, Connor, you're reading psychology books. I am. So many leaders, even many of them are voracious readers, and they still can't seem to read enough leadership books or business books or IT books and keeping up with security standards and how to manage team members. It's not an easy task. We have to learn to be human and work with humans. One more interesting challenge is I want you to think about the types of weirdos in the world who give up a paying job to go start their own business for no pay.
Yeah. And psychopaths is what we call them in the industry, right?
And heck, and as they grow, they agree to pay other people except for themselves for a time, possibly, or at least they're at risk of being the last person before the money runs out.
Yeah.
Those leaders, us, we're not normal.
Yeah.
Your team members that have agreed to work for a paycheck are different than you. And that is a hard thing to understand. It's hard to put yourself in somebody else's shoes when those aren't the same exact things that you value. Some people value security.
Yeah.
Other people value freedom. Some value control. And we got to speak that different language to our audience and their purposes.
Absolutely. I think one thing I really liked talk on that point about DISC profiles, the personality profiles, was the clear separation between this is how you view yourself and this is how everyone else views you. So that you can kind of start to begin to understand. It's like, okay, how do I need to, as you just mentioned, understand what's going to motivate and drive other people, and how can I, to talk back on our other point, how can I adjust my message to fit what this person needs right now? Super important.
So on that note, we've been developing our own analysis. It's not quite a personality profile. It's the 6 leadership superpowers.
I took it.
What did you think? I'm curious because I am not a psychologist, but I wrote the questions, and that bothers me a little bit.
Do you want me to pull up my my answers?
That's up to you.
I really liked what I would have liked is a verbal explanation that I could have read through of like, this is why your strengths, this is why we're putting them these ways.
That is on the next revision list. Thanks for the feedback.
I figured.
And the reason I thought about it is an assessment, but you also mentioned the DISC profiles. There's your answers, and then there's also how the world sees you.
Yeah.
Which can frequently vary.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks we're impartial, but that's automatically a partial statement. Right?
Yeah.
So in the early days of the 6 leadership superpowers, we would always do a 360 review. The catch is it was very subjective, based on mood, who was in the room, and how we collected that data. And very lengthy. So hence we developed a quiz. And now I probably need to add to 2 versions from now, maybe allowing other people to answer for you as well. Because that would be cool.
That would be cool. Or it's, what would be awesome is if maybe they can see your response, like others can see your response and they can grade it. It's like, is this person lying through their teeth? Because like I've taken enough of these tests that if I wanted to get a specific result, I know exactly how I need to start answering things. But that gets rid of the purpose of the test is to understand what you really are and how you're really going to act. So maybe you should have like a BS meter that other people can be like, nope. Just an interesting thought.
Yeah, we tried to word the questions in such a way it was a little harder to cheat, but it also made the wording tricky.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole principle, and this is probably applicable as well. So many folks, they I've already forgot where I was going. Self-awareness.
Responding incorrectly to assessments on purpose.
Behavioral versus innate.
Yeah.
I'm one of the few people in the world whose DISC profiles have changed over time. And there's some personality profile testing like color code and some others that they really want to get down to who are you like as a child, like before you learned all this stuff, who are you? And I think in my wisdom, I've come to the conclusion in my self-proclaimed wisdom, I've come to the conclusion that I don't care as much about who you were. I really do care more about what you've learned and how you apply that in your life. So I have people who won't hire somebody based on a past history. They won't hire based on DISC profile. Oh, they're a strong D. You can't have that in this position. Now, I could agree with you. A position might lend itself to one thing over the other. And so what I use this personality profile test to ask the right questions during the interview afterwards. Hey, I see here we have this challenge with your personality profile and the position profile. Let's talk about ways you deal with this and see if they have adequate answers to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's to tie into this specific thing, I'd love to get your opinion on this. Maybe it's not an offline conversation, but something you need to think about is unless a person, when they're growing up, when they're young, is dedicated to the process of change, like is dedicated to changing based upon new information, new facts, and all that, it is very hard to change their ways, like as an adult. But if the one thing that individual values is changing for the sake of just being better, however they define that, then changing is easier and possible. Because I believe once humans have grown up, once we're really solidified in the way we are, who we are, that we're not, humans by and large don't change at their core. It's my philosophy. But there's one caveat. It's if the person is dedicated to change for the act of just being better, then that's when it's doable.
Connor, you just revealed something to me.
What's that?
I actually agree with you completely, despite it being the opposite of what I just said. I personally happen to have that trait of constant self-improvement, self-awareness, and change.
Yeah.
I embrace it. If I send somebody a document and they go, yep, it's fine, I don't value their opinion at all. I love feedback. I love change. I can't read improvement or business books before bed because I'm too busy like changing. I read books. I've even forgotten to quote which book did what, but it all becomes a part. It's how I became a consultant. Somebody recently asked me in a sales call, hey, how did you get this way? You're in an IT business and now you're consulting me on business. Like, what's going on here? And the answer was, well, I did what you did is I sought help and I loved it and I learned and I changed. And then I sought lots of help from lots of different people over many, many years, books, coaches, consultants, webinars, conferences. And it all actively added to the pool of knowledge and experiences that I pulled from. Even back to the 6 leadership superpowers, Adam did want to add that when we were first testing it, we rated each other internally.
Oh, yeah.
Now we just got to get that onto our quiz system, that if you want some additional feedback to enable you to be able to do it.
That'd be awesome. Almost like if you could share it with everyone you wanted to rate the BS meter, or it's like, tell me what you think about these answers.
Right.
I would be interested to see how the difference between the way you performed on it versus the way other people rated you. That'd be an interesting. Maybe you turn that into a blog post or a LinkedIn post or something like that. That'd be. Is it already there? Am I just touching on something already exists?
No, we have the data. I don't recall the results and analyzing it. When we first did it, not the online quiz, we did it in person, using our blog rating scale for each other. Yeah. There were definitely a few things that were different, and sometimes it's just how we described the rating, and sometimes it was, I'm not very self-aware here.
Yeah.
There's another neat one called the Johari window test. It's broken into 4 panes of glass, but the basic premise is there's stuff that you and everybody knows about you. There's stuff that you know that others don't know about you. There's stuff that they're aware of about you that you're not even aware of. And then, of course, there's the stuff that nobody knows, including yourself. And it's a quiz that you take yourself, but you also send to others, and it kind of shows you where those things are. Just a more self-awareness. That was called the Johari, Johari window test.
I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, it was a very short thing, and you get some peer feedback from it. Very good. We are running out of time. That went so fast.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah. Connor, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for leading a engaging discussion about human psychology. I believe it applies so much more than we know to IT, to documentation, to processes, because we're all doing this for humans, by humans.
Yep.
And it especially applies as the weakest link in security vulnerability.
Absolutely. It only takes one person not knowing what to do to bring your whole company to its knees. And I hate using the fear, the uncertainty, the doubt of cybersecurity to sell. That's the reality. If one person's not bought in, everyone's at risk. And so you need to make sure everyone feels like they're a part of the team and that they're ready to go. It's important.
All right. So Connor's contact info is you can find his website at phinsecurity.io. I'm sorry. Let me spell that out.
Phinsec.io.
Yeah. Phinsec.io, Phinsec.io. Also, certainly look for Connor Swam. Am I saying your last name right?
Swam. Yep. You got it right. Used to be Schwam, but a couple generations ago, way over my head, somebody died and changed the name.
Simplified it for us peoples.
Yeah.
Human behavior. So Connor Swam, find him on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect.
Absolutely.
We are coming close to our year end for ITDUG, and I can tell you we've already got some exciting webinars planned for the future. January, February is planned. October is planned. Veronica, do we know October announcement? Who's coming?
Yes, we have Tim coming. I'm sorry, I can't. I don't remember.
All right, we do have one planned for October. We will get that posted this week, so you can see that on the ITDUG Facebook group. If you are seeing this elsewhere besides the ITDUG Facebook group, it is fb.com/groups/ITDUG. We'll get you straight there. Would love to have you join the conversation about IT documentation. There will be no planned webinar November, December for US and other holidays. However, we're probably going to put together a little event early December, just a meet and greet, hang out, and say hi to each other. All right, and the webinar for October is Tim Golden of the Compliancy Guys. We'll be working on a presentation like this that I hope sticks true to IT, but explores a little more beyond just documentation. Though compliancy certainly is a big piece, much like Dave Sobel talked to us about a few months ago as well. Thanks again, Connor. It's
Absolutely.
been great getting to know you, and we'll see everyone again soon next month. Have a great one.
It was great chatting with you, Alan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Connor.